Hey there, Cinemaster fans! Hope you're ready for some movie magic. Let's dive right in. Our film starts with a man named Manil, who is sitting with his nephew, playing with him, and showing him lots of love. After a while, his sister, Belen, returns and thanks him for what he is doing for her son. Then they greet her and leave. But on the way, Kolya, his wife, she was upset with him and his heart and face were filled with grief. When he asks her, "What's wrong with you?" she responds, "Why don't you want kids now?" He explains, clearly upset, that he's worried he might not be the responsible father he should be, despite how much he cares for his nephew and treats him like his own son. She wonders why he's afraid of having children. Just as he begins to answer, he tells her to focus on the road while driving to avoid an accident. But she loses focus on the highway, and suddenly, they're hit by cars. A year later, we see Manil alone. We learn that his wife died in the accident, and since then, he hasn't visited his sister or her son. He lives with his cat, to whom he is deeply attached. On the news, there's talk of a new virus called TSG. They're waiting for test results before making any decisions, and Europe has already closed its borders. There's a high possibility that the entire world will follow suit, but they're awaiting the outcomes. When Manil hears this, he gets upset, mutes the sound, and heads outside. On the way, he hears on the radio that people are terrified and feel like this is the beginning of the end. When he arrives at the port, he meets two women who have come to see his yacht, intending to buy it. They board and take a tour. When he sees a bracelet, he remembers his late wife, Kolya, who once told him it was her favorite bracelet while they were on the yacht. After finishing with them, he returns home. On the way, his phone rings, and it's Belen, but he doesn't feel like talking to anyone and doesn't answer. At the supermarket, he sees people hoarding food in a frenzy, preparing for quarantine. Returning home, he hears the minister on the news reassuring the public that Spain has managed to contain the virus, and there are no reported cases so far. Later, he puts Kolya's bracelet on his cat and video calls Belen and her son. He tells her that his yacht hasn't been sold yet and that the women who saw it didn't like it. We learn that Mario, Belen's husband, holds a high-ranking position in the military. She informs Manil that the military has prepared accommodations for them in the Canary Islands due to the virus and the ongoing events. She tells him they're leaving at night and asks him to travel to join them in the morning. She expresses how unhappy she'll be if he stays far from them, especially if they impose a lockdown. Initially, he refuses, but after some persuasion, he agrees. The next day, he sets out, and everyone is scared, traveling as well. On the way, he hears on the news about increasing cases of the new virus, which will make the situation more challenging in the coming days. Manil learns that those infected with the virus die within minutes, and that transmission occurs through bites or deep wounds, making the situation extremely alarming. He arrives at the airport and calls his sister, telling her he's about to board a plane and will call her upon arrival. However, to his surprise, all flights are canceled, and air travel is completely shut down. Authorities issue a civil defense warning declaring a state of emergency, causing panic among the public. His sister calls, informing him of a catastrophe. A new variant of the virus with an incubation period of mere minutes has emerged. She urges him to return home immediately and not leave for any reason. People lose their minds. One man brandishes a weapon, threatening others to board a plane. Chaos ensues, and roads are blocked, leaving no one able to come or go. The news reports an attack at the airbase, signaling that the days ahead will be grim. Manil decides to take his cat and walk back home. Upon arrival, he sees an ambulance, police, and a crowd gathered. He finds his neighbor crying over her husband, whose mouth has been sealed shut because he's turned into a zombie. Manil realizes the situation is far worse than he imagined. It's not just a virus. Terrified, he returns home, recalling the accident that took his wife. The next day, he receives a call from Belen, who tells him there's no plan to reopen air travel. She also informs him that they're gathering people for quarantine, but warns that this will worsen the situation as larger groups lead to more infections. She makes him promise not to leave his house under any circumstances, assuring him that Mario will find a way to rescue him. After ending the call, he learns that the situation has worsened in several countries. He watches videos of people eating one another and tutorials on how to protect oneself from zombies. He receives an alert on his phone about a nationwide state of emergency. Manil decides to go out quickly to stock up on food, but he finds nothing, not even cat food. He rushes to another location and manages to grab some supplies. As he's leaving, he sees an officer running toward him. The officer locks himself in, handcuffing himself because he's been bitten. Manil also sees another officer lying on the ground, also bitten. When he tries to help, a zombie charges at him, but the officer shoots the zombie, saving Manil before taking his own life. Manil quickly returns home, fortifies his house, and secures the fence. On the news, he hears that the situation is out of control. Evacuation vehicles are being deployed, and those who disobey military orders will face consequences. Authorities announce that networks will be shut down, leaving only wireless communication available. That night, he hears announcements instructing people to evacuate immediately or face legal consequences. Simultaneously, he receives a message from his sister, urging him not to join them and stay put until they come to rescue him. Shortly after, his home alarm goes off. He sees soldiers jumping into his property, shouting that they know someone is inside and threatening to break down the door if he doesn't come out. He grabs his cat and hides under the table. The soldiers attempt to enter until an officer orders them to leave, saying it's too late. 2 weeks later, he sends a message to his sister, letting her know that he will leave the house because there is no food left at home. He wishes the messages would reach her, but there is no network. Still, he talks to her instead of talking to himself because he was used to calling her. He takes his gear and wears a diving suit, as it provides the best protection against bites. He also takes a fishing gun with him. He starts entering people's houses, searching for food. However, most people had already emptied their homes, leaving nothing behind. After searching through several houses, he enters one and finds a woman sitting there. She tells him not to bother searching the countryside anymore. She explains that her son and his wife took the kids, saying they would take them to a safe place and return to her, but she hasn't seen them since, and her son's phone is off. She offers to help him by pointing out houses where food might still be available. The woman, Isabella, was always observant and kept an eye on everyone from her window. He visits the houses she mentioned but still doesn't find enough food. She then directs him to another house, confident that he will find something there. But all he finds is a motorbike, which he decides to take to move faster between houses. He uses the bike to search more houses but still doesn't find enough until he finally enters a house and discovers some good food. They eat, drink, and chat together. At night, he sends a message to his sister, introducing her to his neighbor Isabella. He tells her how much he misses her and her son. A few days later, he wakes up to Isabella calling him on the radio, telling him to tune in quickly. He hears a message instructing people to head to Arusa Bay, where they will be transported to the Canary Islands. He asks Isabella what she thinks about the plan, mentioning that their food is running out. She hesitates, saying she would only be a burden to him and couldn't go. He reassures her, saying he will take care of everything and that she shouldn't worry. He promises to come by her house in the morning. The next day, he goes to her house and calls out to her, but she doesn't respond. When he goes upstairs, he finds a letter she left, thanking him for everything he did for her in the past days. She had decided to end her suffering. He is deeply saddened by her loss. As he leaves, a zombie attacks him. He falls to the ground, dropping his gun. He struggles to fend off the zombie, which was very strong. Thanks to his suit, the zombie couldn't bite him, and he manages to kill it. He feels sorrowful about the state people have reached. He sends another message to his sister, telling her he heard the radio message and plans to join the others. However, there is still no network. He takes the motorbike and his cat and leaves the city. When he finds the highway blocked, he decides to go through the forest. But zombies swarm him, competing to see who can attack him first. He runs away but stumbles upon a pile of corpses. When he gets up to continue, the motorbike won't start. The zombies close in on him, so he grabs his cat and runs on foot until he reaches the port. To his shock, his boat is gone, along with all the other boats that were there. He enters a fishing gear shop, taking whatever supplies he can find. He spots a small boat in the distance and leaves his cat behind to swim toward it. When he reaches it, he hears a noise inside and discovers a child who had turned into a zombie. Reluctantly, he puts the child out of its misery. However, the boat won't start either, so he takes a small raft and sets off into the water. He sends a message to his sister, telling her he is on his way to the islands and thanking her for the instructions she gave him. He mentions that the safe zones the military directed people to are now abandoned and overrun with zombies. He continues his journey until the raft stops suddenly. He tries to fix it but discovers the engine is jammed with a corpse. He stays in place until he notices a ship approaching. He calls out to them, and they rescue him. However, they don't speak Spanish, except for one man named Victor, who translates for him. He tells them he wants to reach the Canary Islands. When he asks about other survivors, they inform him that the police didn't allow anyone to enter the bay, and that, unfortunately, everyone there had died. Later, when he is alone with Victor, the latter reveals that he told the others he was an engineer, not a lawyer, as many people dislike lawyers. Victor also shares that he is a pilot from Ukraine. He thanks Victor for saving him. Victor tells him they will need his help in the morning to identify locations since he knows the area well. He takes his cat to rest in his cabin. He wakes up later to the sound of people calling for help from the ship. The next morning, he asks Victor about it, but Victor denies anyone came. He insists he saw and heard them, but Victor tells him to mind his own business if he wants to survive. He says the captain wants to see him. When he meets the captain, they discuss locations on the map, and he points out places where they might find weapons and useful tools. Later, he sees the crew gathering weapons and notices the boat he saw the people on. He realizes they rescued those people but are hiding it from him. He sneaks around the ship and discovers a room where people are tied up. He understands that the captain and his crew sent out the message to lure people in, take their belongings, and even captured a man's wife and daughter. Before he can escape, one of the crew members enters and kills the man. Just as he is about to kill him and another prisoner, Victor intervenes, saving them. Victor tells him he hopes his information about the plane is accurate. The three of them escape together with small boat, but Victor kills the man with them, and the men manage to shoot Victor in the arm. Quickly, they take Manila to the shore, supporting him so they can continue their journey. He keeps looking for any car to take them until he finds one and heads to the hospital. Victor tells him that the ship's captain is cruel and heartless, saying the only place for his heart to beat is in hell. He exploited the situation and built an empire for himself on Salvora Island, only helping those who could serve him. He takes women and girls for his pleasure. Manila tells him that once things return to normal, people like the captain must be held accountable. Victor dismissively tells him to stop dreaming, saying, "Can't you see what the situation has become? This, my dear, is the beginning of the end of the world." When they reach the hospital, they are attacked by a group of zombies. Manila fights them off and takes Victor inside, but he doesn't know how to remove the bullet from his arm. While searching for tools, he hears children's voices coming from the ventilation shaft. He climbs up and searches for them until he finds their location. He calls out to them, asking where they are. They tell him they are hiding below, and he hears an older woman guiding them. He speaks to her, explaining that his friend is in the operating room and needs help. Suddenly, a zombie attacks him, but he pushes it away and escapes. Another one pounces on him, but he manages to kill it. However, he is soon chased by a large group of zombies. Without thinking, he rushes downstairs, only to find that neither Victor nor the child is there. He encounters a woman calling out to him, urging him to come inside quickly. He enters, and she locks the door behind them. Inside, he finds his cat and Victor. Lucia asks Cecilia to help Victor before he dies. At first, Cecilia refuses but eventually agrees. Manila sits with his cat and hears the children wanting to play with it. He tells them its name and lets them play with it. After a while, Lucia comes out to reassure him about Victor. He thanks her and tells her he came for the airplane. Lucia takes him to the rooftop and shows him the plane, explaining that the building was used to separate the infected from the healthy. Unfortunately, within a day and a half, everyone in the building became infected. When he asks if there's a way to reach the plane, she tells him not from this building, as it's full of rabid zombies and without weapons, they'd be doomed. She mentions that the boiler room in the basement connects to the other yard, but the problem is that she heard an explosion there a few days ago, making it dangerous for the children. At night, they talk, and Manila learns that their food and water are running out. Lucia tells him about the children, explaining that their parents worked in the hospital but, unfortunately, all turned and died. Manila shares that his wife died in this same hospital. He recounts the incident and what happened, then leaves to enter the room where she died. He remembers her and breaks down crying, asking for her forgiveness. He tells her he thought they had more time together. He leaves her bracelet on the bed and walks away. When he goes to the rooftop, he discovers a network connection and receives video messages from his sister, Blaine. He watches them, where she reassures him about herself and her son. But he hears the captain and his men's voices. He rushes back down, telling everyone they must escape and head to the boiler room to reach the plane before the captain and his men. Victor has somewhat recovered, and everyone grabs a piece of cloth to cover their faces so they can pass through the room. When they reach the door, they can't open it because the heat has warped it. They break it with an axe, but a zombie jumps on Cecilia. Manila and Lucia try to save her, but unfortunately she's bitten. Cecilia tells them to go on and take care of the children. They leave her and continue, but one of the children sees her mother transformed and cries out to her. Manila calms the child and leads them outside, tying the trolleys together to protect them from the zombies. They manage to cover a good distance but are eventually attacked. They fight off the zombies and keep them away until they reach the door. Lucia opens it with the axe, and they rush to the plane. However, the plane won't start. Manila gets out to hold off the zombies before they can all get in. He fights them one by one, but the captain and his men arrive. However, Victor manages to start the plane. They threaten the captain to get off the plane, but Manila signals Victor not to listen to them. Quickly, Victor opens the door, letting the zombies in. The captain and his men are trapped between the metal and the zombies, who finish them off. Victor flies the plane, and Lucia lowers the ladder for Manila, who finally climbs aboard. The plane takes off safely. After a while, Manila receives a call from his sister, telling her he's alive and close to reaching the island. She screams, telling him not to come and to turn back immediately. Suddenly, they see military aircraft heading toward the island. They realize the situation there has spiraled out of control, and the planes are going to destroy the entire island. And that's where the movie ends. Don't forget to leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments.